Looking all statistics with some prime analytics, we got ourselves a group of funky fresh critics. Home runs, some free throws, goals, fights, and touchdowns. Pocket says it all, so it's best you stick around. Analyzing this, analyzing that, putting a perspective on every single step. Now turn up your volume and join the team. Things are about to get started, it's 1st and 15.
And hello and welcome to First and 15 here in the WBTA 100.1 FM, 1490 AM, 106.1 FM studios here in downtown Batavia. Pete Zehler, the director of sports here at WBTA, alongside Mike Rose, the sports editor of the Batavia Daily News, Tylor Klien, our NFL expert here at WBTA. Two special guests today on the show. We have Christopher Geisey, known as KG. You're probably going to hear me only call him KG throughout this episode. A longtime friend of mine. He was our Denver Broncos analyst last week. After a round of golf with me today, he decided to join the show, and of course we got Dakota Higgins on here as well, a Warsaw native, and he is also here on the First and 15 podcast. So today, as promised, we're going to get into the NFC South. First off, Mike, Tyler, I always like to ask you guys, how's it going?
I mean, it's been good. Yeah.
Yeah, the Sabres lost, so
that's not
Mike's schedule's clear.
The schedule's opened up a little bit, so that's a plus. Sucks that they lost, but the schedule opens up, so that's a win. We were just talking right before we hit record here. Montreal winning right now as we start the recording here, so that maybe puts a damper on the idea that the Sabres, who knows how far they could have went if they just catch a break there in overtime.
Yeah, it's impossible to say. Another big piece of news today, too. Kyle Busch passes away. There's certainly thoughts and prayers with the Busch family there. Want to mention, too, that it's spring. My allergies are always terrible. If I sound nasally, you see me sniffling, please just deal with it. I am historically known to have terrible sinuses, so you're going to have to deal with that throughout this episode. We'll get into the NFC South, though. As always, we're going to go bottom to top, starting off with the team that finished last year in a division where it felt like there was no last-place team because they all just kind of sucked. And it's the New Orleans Saints. They finished last season. We'll start out by talking about their free agent moves. I'm going to go right down through them here. Biggest move they made. Well, I don't think this is the biggest move they made, but this is the one that ESPN lists first. They signed David Edwards, the former Buffalo Bills guard, to a 4-year deal worth $45 million guaranteed and a $20 million signing bonus. They shore up the offensive line. They get Travis Etienne to a 4-year, $52 million deal, which I'm sure Mike Rose hates, right? You don't like that, Mike?
Oh, terrible. Awful. Okay. Awful.
Yeah, I knew that from a mile away. Mike Rose was not going to like that deal. I don't really love that one either, to be honest with you, though. Caden Ellis, a linebacker that was formerly an Atlanta Falcon, they signed to a 3-year, $33 million deal with $23 million guaranteed. They get John Ridgway III, a defensive tackle. They sign him to 2-year, $6.2 million deal. And they also get Ryan Wright, a punter. They sign him to an $8 million deal. I believe he was the former punter of the Saints. And so I think he's just coming back home here. I believe he was their punter already.
Ryan Wright was actually a Minnesota Viking.
He was a Viking, okay. So he comes back, and they also sign Noah Fant, the former Denver Broncos tight end, and I believe he was in Cincinnati last year, right?
Yeah.
Cincinnati last year, they signed him to a 2-year deal, which that could be an underrated move. So with these free agent moves, and I'm going to throw it to Mike first, as always I like to do it here, it kind of feels like they're investing in, right now, second-year quarterback Tyler Shuck with these moves. They're getting receivers. There's rumors, by the way, right now, too, going around that they're interested in trading for George Pickens. That's like a very active and hot headline right now around the NFL world. A lot of people have reported on that. I don't think it makes any sense. They already have Chris Olave. They just drafted Jordan Tyson. But that's a rumor. They go and get Fant. They go and get ETN. They invest in their offensive line. And Mike, I know that I don't know how you feel, but I'm not the biggest believer right now in Tyler Shuck. I didn't see enough that first season to say, yeah, this is the guy. But the moves the Saints are making kind of make me feel like they might think that way.
Yeah, listen, we might not believe in him, but they sure do. I was not a Tyler Shuck guy coming out of the draft as a prospect last year. He did impress me at times. I wouldn't say I'm definitely more in on Tyler Shuck today than I was 12 months ago. And like you said, they're definitely building around him. David Edwards, I think, brings a lot of stability to that offensive line. He kind of revitalized his career over the last few years in Buffalo as part of a really good offensive line unit that was protecting Josh Allen. The Travis Etienne contract is ridiculous, which we can talk about.
I finally agree with you on one, Mike. That's a little rich for Travis Etienne, I felt like.
A, the number is just stupid. B, they're still paying Alvin Kamara, so it's doubly stupid. It just makes no. They're paying their running backs. I mean, they got two $12 million a year running backs on the roster.
Mickey Loomis loves living in cap hell.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the Saints are always in cap hell.
And
every
they
year.
literally do like the same things.
Yeah.
They're both good pass catchers.
Listen, I think the number for Travis Etienne is just dumb, but I think the player that the Saints are getting is fine, especially because Alvin Kamara the last 2 years has just been injured every year. Like, it seems like every week. So, and with the division, and we'll continue to keep talking about it, that just seemingly seems to be open. I don't hate the move, but I think the price for Travis Etienne is just dumb.
I do like Etienne the player, but I think they're paying him like 2/3 more than I would want to pay him.
Yeah.
I don't even think I like him that much as a player.
I just think for the Saints that just don't have a really great running back room, and Travis Etienne.
Whose fault is that? They have two running backs on the roster that they drafted in the last couple years. Kendra Miller, Devin Neal.
Yeah.
But how much can you invest in a freaking running back room?
Yeah.
When you stink, it's ridiculous.
But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. Tyler, I'll kind of pose the same question to you. Where are you at on the Saints? It does feel like they're kind of trying to invest right now in Tyler Shuck.
I don't think it kind of feels like it. I think they absolutely are investing in Travis or Tylor Shuck. I also, with Mike out of the draft, just didn't really care for him as a prospect. He's just he was an older prospect to begin with, so it's like already there. It's like, all right, 25-year-old guy coming out of the draft. I mean, potential first round pick, second round pick. It's like whatever. But I think he definitely showed signs at the end of last year as being a quality player. Maybe not a franchise guy, but a guy that can win you football games, and especially if you put weapons around him. And I think they've done a good job. I mean, we talked about the Travis Etienne, the draft pick of Jordan Tyson. We kind of talked about a few episodes ago with a draft preview. I think they've done a solid job of building around him for sure. And I like Kellen Moore. I mean, I've do this every single time. I talk about the systems and the coaches, and I like Kellen Moore. I think he's done a good job. I think he did a good job last year. So I think it's a potential good offense coming up.
Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. I will also say, just to wrap up on their free agents, really like the addition of Caden Ellis, who comes over from
that's a good sign.
Division rivals Atlanta. He really had a good stint with the Falcons and kind of emerged as a really important player for them in their defensive system. So I think he brings a lot to that Saints defensive front.
I also like the Noah Fant move. I think they must have got him cheap, but they didn't even list the price they got him at.
Noah Fant's terrible.
But Noah Fant, last year for Cincinnati, he kind of got some big chunk plays. It seemed like every time the Bengals needed that big chunk play last year, Joe Burrow just shot it down the field to Noah Fant, and he got it for him. I think whatever they got him must have been was cheap because they didn't even list the price on it. Usually that means it's about a veteran minimum. So I'm assuming for that, whatever they got him at that cheap of a price, I think that's a perfectly good second tight end to have.
2 years, $8.7 million total.
Yeah, that's a perfectly fine deal for Noah Fant.
I'm going to be honest. I don't think he's going to play like at all.
I think he'll get on the field. I think you'll see.
I don't even think he's the backup when they break camp.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll develop on that.
And we'll talk about why when we get to the draft.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and argue over Noah Fant too much. I'm not that passionate on the topic. So let's talk about the draft. I already kind of preluded to it earlier, but they did get Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver out of Arizona State. If you watched the draft episode, that was my favorite wide receiver in the draft. Love him. Great route runner, big body, really good at the catch point. I think he's going to be a stud for this offense. In the second round, they pick up Christian Miller, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. They get Oscar Delp, the tight end out of Georgia. That must be who Mike Rose is referring to, I'm assuming. They get Jeremiah Wright in the fourth round, the guard out of Auburn. Also in the fourth round, they pick up Bryce Lance, the wide receiver out of North Dakota State. Fifth round, they get Lorenzo Styles Jr., safety out of Ohio State. Sixth round, Berrien Brown, the wide receiver out of LSU. And in the seventh round, they pick up TJ Hall, the cornerback out of Iowa, which once again here in the draft, they pick up two wide receivers, they pick up an offensive guard, they pick up a tight end, and, once again, kind of the same thing as their free agency. It really feels like they're surrounding right now their young quarterback with talent.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it that the draft was get Tylor Shuck as much help as we can in terms of playmakers. And they were lacking in that department, if we're being honest, especially after trading away Rashid Shaheed to Seattle at the deadline last year. They needed more weapons on that offense. We've talked a lot about Jordan Tyson already on previous episodes, so if you didn't listen to the draft episode, you should. It was a great episode.
Yeah.
And Jordan Tyson's a really talented player. I think people thought he could go a lot higher at points during his draft process over the last couple of years, so I think they got a good value there at 8. Oscar Delp's a guy I really like. I think he did not get the ball enough at Georgia, in my opinion. I don't think they used him to his full capabilities as a receiver, and I think he also is a good enough blocker to get on the field as kind of that number 2 tight end for the Saints behind Juwan Johnson, who's a former wide receiver that they moved over to tight end, so obviously not a great blocker. But I think Delp is good enough as a blocker to be that number 2 tight end, and I think he has a lot more to give as a receiving threat.
Yeah, Georgia's offense last year just wasn't that.
They just kind of stunk. So I think there's more there with Oscar Delp. I think he's a better athlete than I think people would give him credit for, and I think he's a guy who can make some plays.
About it too. All right. Well, so moving on, we're going to talk about
Oh my God.
So moving on, we're going to talk a little about the Saints, what we think their projection is for the year next season. I'll start out. I'll get right into it with the New Orleans Saints. Do I think they're the last place team in the division? I don't know. It's hard to say because I'm not really terribly high on any team in this division. There's one team that I like a little bit more than the rest, but that doesn't mean that I'm like ridiculously high on any team out of this division. So my projection for them, realistically, they could finish anywhere between 2nd and 4th, and it wouldn't stun me. I don't think they'll win this division, but I do think there is enough talent. They have offensive weapons. There are some guys in that defense that I like. There's certainly a team that has some talent here, and I can't picture them though being more than a 7 or 8 win team, and I think that's about their ceiling. And I'm not a huge Tylor Shuck guy. I think I mentioned that earlier. And I know he was decent last year. I think now that teams have a year of film on him, though, I'll be a lot more curious to see how he ends up looking, now that teams have that year of film on him. So where I'm at right now, I like some things about the Saints roster. I think there is some talent there, but realistically, I think they're a maximum of 7 to 8 win team and probably somewhere between 2 and 4 in the division, which I know is vague, but I just think the division, is pretty bad in general.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I like the way that the Saints ended the season last year. I think they just looked like a well-coached team. I think Tylor Shuck looked good. I think they've done a good job of, again, we've already said this with the Jordan Tyson, the Travis Etienne signings. I think they've just done a good job of improving the offense, and I think that this team can, in a division that just doesn't, on paper, right now look very good, to say the least, I think they absolutely can compete for a spot to win this division. Is the way I see it.
Yeah, so I went through before the show tonight, and now that we have a schedule, I wanted to hold myself to the things I say on here. So I went through and I picked every game the NFL season, and I have it sitting in front of me, and I ended up with the Saints at 9-8 on the season and winning the NFC North. I don't think it's a very good division. I think it looks a lot like it did last year.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest issue when you look at this division kind of overall is there's not a lot of great quarterback play, and there's a lot of uncertainty with a lot of these guys, and there's a lot of range of outcomes with a lot of these quarterbacks in this division. So is Tylor Shuck my favorite quarterback in the NFL? No, probably not. Do I think Tylor Shuck is
He's probably not even your favorite quarterback in the division.
No, probably. Yeah. Well, I'm an OU guy, so you know who my favorite quarterback in the division is. But is Tylor Shuck going to the Hall of Fame anytime soon? No. But can he win this division next year? Yeah, I think he can, and I think there's enough around him to hide some of his weaknesses. He has 2 good pass-catching running backs that can kind of serve as safety valves. He has, if you like Noah Fant, 3 good tight ends. Yeah. If you don't like Noah Fant, I think he has at least a couple of good tight ends.
I mean, we talked about it on last week's episode. Like, you can win a Super Bowl without a franchise quarterback. We've seen it the last 2 years. Not necessarily trying to compare.
This team's not winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, no. I'm not trying to compare the Saints team to the Seahawks or the Eagles or Tylor Shuck necessarily to Sam Darnold or Jalen Hurts. But if you surround these guys with weapons and you have a good offensive play caller, which the Saints I think have both of those, you can win. You can win football.
I'll kind of lean into it a little bit too. With one thing I said about the Cardinals is I like the situation they're creating for their future quarterback, and I'll kind of say the same thing about the Saints, where even if Tylor Shuck ends up not being the guy, I feel like they are creating a nice bed to lie in for whatever quarterback they do end up getting in the future. So maybe if Shuck has a bad year, they move on, they draft one of these young good quarterbacks in the draft. I think they have made a nice seat here for whoever's the next quarterback in.
People got to remember, there's like 10 first-round quarterbacks in this draft year, potentially. Yeah. So like all of these teams, there's a handful of teams in the NFL that are kind of doing this, right, where they either have a placeholder like Arizona or the Jets or some of those teams, or they have a young guy that are like, let's see what we can do to maximize everything around him. And, if it doesn't work out, you're going to be in a position where you are going to be able to get, a potential franchise quarterback in next year's draft.
And also with what you said about the potential 10 first-round draft pick quarterbacks, it seems like every year now there's always just a quarterback that comes out of nowhere. That
Yeah.
I mean, Fernando Mendoza, Jaden Daniels, and no one
With the NIL
expected
especially.
him to be
Even
that
going
high.
back as far as Joe Burrow.
Yeah, like it just keeps happening. So like there's gonna potentially be more than just 10 first-round quarterbacks. So.
One thing I want to throw out there too is this division. I feel like there's not a division in football this year where the divisional games matter more than this division, just because I think that the teams are going to have a hard time winning against teams from other divisions because they're all fairly bad. So I think, whatever team has the best division record has a very good chance of winning this division. So if the Saints can handle business against Atlanta, Tampa Bay, and Carolina, I mean, yeah, they absolutely could compete.
We saw how crazy the tiebreakers ended up last year in this
It was a three-way tie for first.
Where there, I don't remember exactly who it was. I think it was Atlanta maybe, who was like already eliminated and yet still factoring into tiebreakers in this division despite being eliminated for, over a month in terms of winning the division. So, this is one of those weird divisions, and it's been like this for a few years now, where it's one of those kind of anybody can kind of emerge on a given year and make something happen. And, there was a couple years, obviously, when Brady was in Tampa where they kind of ran it a little bit. But, right now it's as open as probably any division in the NFL. And for me, I like the Saints team. We haven't talked about their defense at all. I think the defense is better than people give it credit to. I like Kool-Aid McKinstry in the back end, Justin Reed at safety. Like, they got some guys, Chase Young up front. Like, they got some guys that can play on that defense and make some plays and some timely plays potentially for them to win a couple of these divisional games and find their way into the postseason.
Yeah, they have enough. They have enough on that defense.
I don't disagree. I think it's just an acceptable defense. Like, if we're ranking the defenses in the NFL, I probably put the Saints somewhere between like 12 and 16, right around the middle of the pack. And that in that division, though, I mean, that's fine.
That'll do the trick.
That's acceptable. I will say, if Tylor Shuck surprises me, which I don't think he will, I've said it enough times, but if Tylor Shuck surprises me and they get like top 12 quarterback play out of him, which in no way I think they will, but if they do, there's weapons there, there's a good line, there's a good running game, where, I mean, it could end up being a surprise like top 10 offense. If Tylor Shuck provides that level of play, which I don't think he will, but the recipe is there. I see what they're trying to cook up. So it certainly has the potential to be good, but I'm sticking with my projection of I think they're probably somewhere between second and fourth in the division, and for all we know, that could be a 5-win team in second place in this division.
And let the record show, I think we've covered 2 other divisions so far where we think there's probably going to be almost certainly multiple playoff teams that come out of it. I don't think anybody in this room believes that this is a multiple playoff team division.
The winner of the division is that's it.
So, like you said, the divisional game's even that much more important, given that there's probably no path to a wild card spot for these teams.
Yep.
All right, so does anyone else have anything to add about the Saints before we move on?
Higgins?
I actually do like the Noah Fant pickup.
Okay. All right.
I think he's a little bit fun. You can laugh all you want, dude. I think he's probably good for 3-4 touchdowns, and it's going to be pretty big plays.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not picking him up in fantasy.
Yeah.
But like, I think he's going to
I
be
hope
relevant
not.
a little bit. He's going to be relevant a little bit. The problem is Juwan Johnson, because I mean, he's obviously better.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never even mentioned him.
I mentioned Juwan Johnson.
He did.
But the thing about it is that they're going to focus Juwan Johnson.
For the record, Noah Fant has 4 touchdowns in the last 3 NFL seasons. So
listen,
I'm
I'm
just-
glad-
just-
How many were last year?
3. 3 were last year.
Exactly.
Also, his career high is 4 in a
Exactly.
season. So, like, this guy stinks. We're just going to be honest about this.
If Tyler-
He also had 288 yards last year. I don't know where you got off beat being like, yeah, when Joe Burrow needed a play,
I feel
Noah Fant was his guy.
I feel
not Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
Not T. Higgins.
I feel like anytime on FanDuel I bet Noah Fant like plus 50 yards, he got it. I think that's where I got that from. Is anytime I put like Noah Fant over 40 yards, he hit for me, and I just thought he was a beast.
So this guy's gambling played into faulty analysis.
All right, well, thank you, Higgins, for that.
Higgins, thank you for the great analysis here. We appreciate it. But that will do it for the Saints. I think we've all said our piece there.
Which, by the way, before this episode started, Pete looked at me and Mike, dead serious. He's like 10 minutes per team. Can we do that today? How long was that, you think?
This has been a 20-minute segment I can see right in front of me. Listen.
And you cut us down short. I could keep going.
Yes,
I got more.
You guys got to understand, your boy's a little tired. I played golf earlier, spent 5 hours at TF Browns. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But we're going to take a quick time out here on WBTA. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the team that finished third place in the division last year. That's the Atlanta Falcons, a team that I'm invested in a little bit this year. So we'll be back here in just a short moment on WBTA.
It's about to get started. It's first and 15.
If you care to cover, we cover with care. Sterling tents and awnings for quality service and integrity. Sterling tents and awnings. No event is too big or small. For over 100 years we do it all. If you care to cover, we cover with care. Sterling tents and awnings.
Welcome back to First and 15 here on WBTA 100.1 FM, 1490 AM, 106.1 FM, the WBTA Sports Network. I'm Pete Zehler of WBTA alongside Mike Rose, the editor of the Batavia Daily News sports site, and of course Tylor Klien, our WBTA NFL analyst. Special guest today, Christopher Gazine, KG, along with Dakota Higgins as well. We're going to get into the Atlanta Falcons now. We just went over the New Orleans Saints. Moving on to the team that finished third in a three-way tie last season in the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons. As always, we're going to start out with our free agency, which this is a team that made a lot of moves in free agency, but none of them really feel terribly significant to me. So we'll start out. They got Brian Robinson Jr. on a one-year, $2.5 million contract. He'll be the replacement for Tyler Algier. He'll be backing up Bijan Robinson. They signed Trevor Siemian, who I didn't even realize he was still in the NFL at this point, to be completely honest with you. Probably the third-string quarterback. They signed Tua Tagovailoa to a one-year deal worth $1.3 million. Tua's still getting paid from Miami, so Tua probably doesn't care what a team pays him if it means he might have a shot of playing. They signed Jahan Dotson out of Philadelphia to a two-year, $15 million deal. They get the Dolphin punter Jake Bailey to a three-year deal. They signed Austin Hooper, the former Patriot and a former Falcon too a while back, to a one-year, $3.25 million deal. Cameron Thomas, they signed him, the former Brown, to a $3.1 million deal. Deshaun Hand.
Austin Hooper, by the way, also a former Falcon.
Yeah, I said that, Mike.
Oh, I was just making sure.
You got to listen to your guy, man.
Yeah, my bad.
They got Deshaun Hand.
That's on me.
I'm just gonna go. I'm not gonna list all these contracts. Deshaun Hand, Channing Tindall,
They signed half the league.
Christian Harris, Alamide Zacchaeus comes back. Aziz Ujulari, which actually that's a decent signing, I think. Nick Folk, the former Jet, Corey Levin, Chris Williams, LaCale London, and Samson Ebukam, and Tyler Goodson. So they like Mike said, they signed half the league there in free agency. So I'll pass it over to Mike. I'll say first, out of all those moves, the one that kind of, obviously you got to talk about Tua Tagovailoa, because I do think if Michael Penix has a hard time next year, there's a real chance that Tua does start some games for this team. That's obviously a significant one. I do really like, though, also bringing back Austin Hooper on a cheap deal. I think he's a very good second string tight end. I'm all about the second string tight ends today.
It's the backup tight end episode.
Listen, this division's not giving us a ton to talk about here.
Something new, and this is the
backup tight end episode.
I really like the backup tight ends in the NFC South. Yeah, I love this. I like Ujulari too. But anyways, off to Mike if he wants to break down whatever he liked or disliked about this Falcons free agency.
It was pretty bad. They just signed a bunch of guys to one-year deals, and they lost way more than they brought in my opinion. We just talked about Caden Ellis in the last segment. Tyler Algier gone into that great Arizona Cardinals running back room. They lost D. Alford to the Buffalo Bills. They lost Arnold Ebiketie, who I liked as a young pass rusher. They lost Darnell Mooney. They lost a bunch of guys, so that's kind of why they needed to sign so many guys. And, 3 of their free agent contracts were for longer than 1 year. Nick Folk, Jake Bailey, the kicker and punter, and then Olamide Zacchaeus. They're the only guys who have
their special teams are locked down.
Yeah, luckily their kicker and punter stability is going to be great for the next couple of years. Brian Robinson comes in as a nice replacement for Algier. I think that's could be an upgrade, depending on what version of Brian Robinson we get. It's been a couple years since we've seen kind of a great Brian Robinson, I feel like, on the field. Tua, I think, is going to be important because I think he's probably going to play a lot of games as the starting quarterback on this team. But, I'm just not real high on this team in general, if that isn't obvious by how I'm talking about them here. I don't love what they did. I think they netted a loss in free agency overall with the guys who left the team, and it's tough to feel really excited about the free agency when you basically spend your 2 biggest value contracts on kicker and punter.
Yeah, no, there's not much. I think the only thing I will touch on the Falcons free agency class is, you can ask Pete this. I have been off the Tua whatever.
There's no bigger hater of Tua in the world than Tyler.
I can't even say his last name right because I've hated him forever. I've been so against anything. When they were scoring 70 points on the Broncos, I said it was fluke. I'm going to be honest.
You
with
were right.
I just was like, this is not a real team. This is not going to keep happening. So Tua signing is just whatever for me. It's definitely Michael Penix's team if he's healthy, if he's playing. Again, like Mike said, there's a chance.
Are we
that
sure
Tua's-
about that?
I
Here's the
do.
thing.
I'm not.
Tua stinks,
I
but
like
Michael
Michael
Penix, I think, also stinks. They've cornered the market on mediocre left-handed quarterbacks.
I think at this point in Tua's career and Michael Penix's career, one has the upside, the other one doesn't. And if Michael Penix stinks, you know what you have in Tua, and if you lose football games with Michael Penix, you might have a high pick. And
Out of those two quarterbacks, one has shown me that if you put them in the right offense, they can at least be productive in the NFL.
By the way, Tua's only 2 years older than Michael Penix.
Yeah, but that's my whole point though. Is you know what you have out of Tua right now. You don't know what
you have at Michael Penix too. He's 26 years old. He's had 9 surgeries to his legs. What is he ever?
Yeah,
gonna be?
I'm not trying to.
Is
I'm
9
not trying
really
to
the number?
No, that was an exaggeration. But
It's honestly closer than you think.
No,
for
pretty
real,
close.
because he's had a bunch.
I'm not trying to say it in the standpoint of I believe Michael Penix is the future and what he can do, but I'm so against Tua, and I just don't think that if you are trying to realistically win football games, you start Tua. And if Michael Penix is bad, then again, I just said, lose games and you get a high pick. I just as simple as that. You need a quarterback in that room then. Tua is not the future of this team.
Well, they need a quarter. Okay, I'm just gonna say they need a quarterback anyways. Yeah. No matter you will never have a result in my mind that could happen this year where you're gonna.
But again, if
they have their quarterback,
if you were Kevin Stefanski, who would you rather start?
I would rather start Tua.
I think I'd rather start Tua as well.
No way.
I think you got to start Penix at one point just to see what you got, but I do think that Tua has a little bit more upside.
I think Penix is coming off an injury. He barely beat out Kirk Cousins, if we're being honest.
I agree.
Listen, that's fair. Again, I'm not trying to act like I'm.
Who would you rather have, Tua or Kirk Cousins?
Kirk Cousins.
Tua.
I am so
right now.
You are talking to the biggest Tua hater.
You are
so bad.
That bad.
He is so bad. Tua is so bad.
All right, Tyler, I got to ask you: is Jimmy Garoppolo or Tua Tagovailoa?
Oh, that's
right
hard.
now.
Right now.
Tua.
None of them.
Jimmy G's basically retired, right?
That one's Tua.
Yeah,
didn't he retire? Is he still playing?
No, he's the backup in the Rams.
Yeah, he's on the Rams.
Is he under contract?
He was last season. I don't know if they brought him back.
Yeah.
I was about to say. I feel like Ty Simpson.
I mean, we just did the Rams episode.
I feel like he wasn't on the roster.
I don't think I saw him in there. Yeah.
We'll confirm that a little bit later here. I'm sure Mike's gonna look that up and see if he's still in the league.
Again, if you're trying to win football games and you're trying to see what you have versus Michael Penix, you got to start Michael Penix. And if he's bad, then all right, play Tua, but you're not going to win games.
Well, I will say this, and I don't know if Mike disagrees with me, but I think Michael Penix absolutely starts the year as the Falcons quarterback. I think
is he going to be healthy to start the year?
I think week one. I'm not, to be honest with you. I just haven't really kept up on his health situation, so I don't know.
Actually, real quick, let's just talk about that. Michael Penix being injured. I mean, Tua's always injured. So Trevor Siemian might be the guy.
Well, that's why I said earlier. I said Trevor Siemian might see some unfortunate play for the Falcons.
Yeah. So I don't know. This quarterback room is just really bad.
I think this could be a really ugly year for the Atlanta Falcons.
Like the thing I was going to wait on
we're going to get a little bit deeper into this.
Yeah,
so let's go through the draft first for the Atlanta Falcons before we get into predictions and all that. 'Cause obviously, we have all of a lot to say. For the draft, they didn't have a first-round pick. In the second round, they pick up Avian Terrell, a pick I really like. I think he can be a very good corner for the Atlanta Falcons. Third round, they get Zachariah Branch, a wide receiver that might see some playing time in this wide receiver room. Fourth round, they pick up Kendall Daniels, a linebacker out of Oklahoma. Mike should be an expert on him. In the sixth round, they pick up Ontario Thompson, the defensive tackle out of Washington. Also in the sixth round, they pick up Harold Perkins Jr., a linebacker out of LSU. And in the seventh round, they pick up the offensive tackle out of Ohio State, Ethan Anawana. And that is their draft right there. So not a flashy draft. They didn't have a first-round pick. But I do like Terrell. I think Terrell probably slots in and plays right away if he's able to. Any comments about the draft, Tyler and Mike, before we dive deeper into the Falcons?
I think it's an interesting draft. I mean, they draft 3 guys that I think at one point in this class projected as first-round picks over their run over the last couple of years. They made one of the worst trades in the history of pro football, which is why they didn't have a first-round pick this year. And the trade up last year where they traded the Rams their first-round pick so they could take James Pierce, who we can get to a little bit later. But I do think Terrell has a good shot to start opposite his brother pretty quickly as the number 2 corner in Atlanta. Zachariah Branch is a guy who isn't actually good at playing wide receiver, but he's good with the ball in his hands, in my opinion. So we'll see how creative Kevin Stefanski can get to get him the ball in space on kind of some bubble screens. I think he's that kind of player, at least right now. We'll see if he can develop later on. Kendall Daniels is a guy who was a safety converted to linebacker. He played a big role on the Oklahoma defense last year. That was one of the best in the country. So I expect Kendall Daniels to be able to. I think he makes the roster, and we'll see how he kind of mixes in. He's going to have some pass coverage ability, obviously, as a former safety. And then Harold Perkins is, I think, maybe the most interesting guy because he was once thought as a top 5 pick. I said in a previous episode, Brian Kelly should be put in jail for what he did to his players' draft stocks. And this is another guy who he just torpedoed the draft stock of. Ultimately, he's just kind of undersized as a pass rusher, and he's not good enough as a coverage guy to kind of drop back and be an off-ball linebacker. So I'll be curious to see where Atlanta lines him up because he doesn't really have a role that makes a lot of sense, and that's why he ends up going in the 6th round. But talking about a guy who had multiple double-digit sack seasons in college and was at a time thought as the best pass rusher in the country during his college career. So, there's some upside there, especially with the 34th pick of the 6th round.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much on the draft. I always think it's cool, like stories like this when your brother gets drafted on the same team as you, as AJ Trell, and I think it's a cool story. Other than that, I got nothing else really to talk about as far as the draft goes for the Falcons. Really much more about the roster.
Yeah, it's not too terribly flashy of a draft. So I think the biggest topic of discussion here with the Falcons is our projection for the season, and we'll get right into that right now. So I'll start out. So it's well known, I said last week, I like them to win this division, and I'll kind of paint the picture of why. Excuse me, as I had to cough a little bit there. But so I'll start by painting the picture. It all starts up front. This is a team that I think has the best offensive line in this division. I really like a lot of the guys they have on this offensive line here in Atlanta. You got Jake Matthews. I mean, that guy is an all-time great at left tackle for them. He's been phenomenal. All-time great might be a stretch, but he's been phenomenal for them at left tackle. There's no question about it over his career. You got Matthew Bergeron, who's a very, very good guard for them. You got Chris Lindstrom, who's a very good guard for them. I like this offensive line up front for Atlanta. Tight end position. Kyle Pitts finally showed up last year. It took him like 4 years into his career to finally do it. I'll be curious to see if he can keep it up again this year, but I like the tight end room. I already mentioned I like Austin Hooper as a backup tight end. I think that is very, very good tight end room.
I just don't get why. Like, what is Austin Hooper
Austin Hooper is
I can't help you with this
he's
one,
not
dude. You
good.
helped me. I can't help
Austin
you.
Hooper's a good catch guy. I like Austin Hooper as a good red zone threat guy. I like him. I like him as a good red zone threat guy. Former basketball player.
New England didn't even like him in the red zone.
Well, I think Atlanta will. In terms of wide receiver room,
why? He's 31 years old.
In terms of wide receiver, let's just get through the point here.
Charlie Warner clears.
In terms of the wide receiver room here, obviously Drake London's a phenomenal wide receiver one. Past that's definitely the weak spot of this offense is they don't have a ton of depth at wide receiver. I won't argue that. Jahan Dotson is wide receiver 2. I'd like him more as a wide receiver 3. I don't necessarily love him as a wide receiver 2. You got to hope that one of these guys is able to step up. Maybe Zacchaeus has had some good years in the past. Maybe he ends up slotting into this role. But I definitely think this is a team that could benefit from a trade or finding someone in free agency or someone along those lines to fill in a wide receiver spot. I do think they need another receiver. In terms of Bijan Robinson, nothing needs to be said there. Bijan Robinson's phenomenal. One of the best running backs in football. Brian Robinson Jr., we all already said, pretty good backup running back to have as well. As far as the quarterback goes, I do think that Penix starts the year probably week 2, 3, 4, somewhere around there. You're going to see Tua get the ball. I think that Penix is going to have a hard time. I just don't think Penix is very good at all. I don't think Tua's anything special, but I think he's shown in the NFL that if you put a good offense around him, he can be effective. He can just win. He can win games by not doing anything special for you. I think the biggest thing with this offense that I do like too. We didn't talk about the addition of Kevin Stefanski in the offseason, and I love Kevin Stefanski. I think Kevin Stefanski is arguably a top 6-7 coach in the NFL. I really like Kevin Stefanski. I think he has a great offensive system. He did a lot with a little in Cleveland over the past few years. I think Kevin Stefanski is a phenomenal coach, and I'm very curious to see what he does with the plethora of weapons he has here in Atlanta.
Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year because of his defense.
I understand
that. Coach.
He also somehow won.
I just want to make this very clear.
Here's my thing with Kevin Stefanski. Not to cut you off before you can finish your Falcons.
Yeah, sorry.
Here, but Kevin Stefanski, 2-time Coach of the Year,
Because of his defense.
Been below 500 in every other season of his career.
Yeah.
That man won Coach of the Year just because he made the Browns not complete.
Yeah, he won Coach of the Year in
Because
Cleveland,
of Jim
Ohio, where they
Schwartz and
can't
Myles
win
Garrett.
games.
Because of Jim Schwartz and Myles Garrett is why he won Coach of the Year.
Well, he also had Joe Flacco out there just looking like an MVP candidate for 5 weeks.
He's a
He
solid
also had
coach.
Baker Mayfield.
Listen, he's a solid coach, but like top 6. I mean,
Top 6 is cool.
I think Kevin Stefanski's
Top
a phenomenal
6 is wrong.
coach.
The guy was literally fired in the last calendar year.
I'll give him
Yes.
which,
top
by the way,
And a lot of people were very upset about it. You can talk to a lot of
No.
Browns fans that think it's ridiculous he was fired.
It's fair
A
that he
lot
was
of Browns
fired,
fans don't know what good football looks like. They haven't seen it in 30 years.
It's fair that he
In
was
their
fired, but the fact
lives.
that their general manager wasn't fired as well was what was crazy, I think.
Kevin Stefanski's a good coach, and
He's a good coach.
you're going to see that this
Top
year.
6.
Top
Crazy.
6 is great. not
If
good.
you can take the Browns to the playoff twice, I have a lot of respect for you
I
as a
agree with
coach.
Mike.
I'll
with
give you
what-
top
with
12
what Mike
for
just
him.
said. Top 6 is great, not good.
Yeah, you said good and then top 6. Those do not line
I
up.
think he's right in that tier somewhere, and we're going to see it this year.
But continue,
That-
sorry.
In the defense, he is inheriting a very good defense. I'll tell you, I really like the secondary here for Atlanta. We already mentioned A.J. Terrell. Avian Terrell is probably going to line up in the second corner spot. I think they have really good corners. Not a lot of depth. Mike Hughes, corner number 3. We talked about that a little off air. I'm not huge on him, but I mean, every team doesn't have a terrible amount of depth when you talk about secondary players. In terms of their linebackers, now James Pierce, we're going to get to that. He might be in some legal trouble. We'll have to see if he's going to miss time or not. But James Pierce was phenomenal last year as a rookie. Jalen Walker is a guy that I really liked coming out of the draft. He showed flashes last year, wasn't as consistent as they might have liked him to be. I think year 2, Jalen Walker can make a big impact up front, though, for the Falcons. In the linebacker room, they got Divine Diablo, a guy that got a lot of tackles in Vegas for the Raiders. I think that he certainly could be a factor in
That wasn't
again
hard,
this
by
year.
the way. There was nobody else to tackle.
I think the Diablo will be good once again. Christian Harris, we talked about him a little bit earlier, too. I don't necessarily love their tackles up front. I'm not necessarily in love with what they got there with Deshaun Hand, Mason Smith. I do think overall, though, this is a very good defense. I love their safeties, Jesse Bates, Xavier Watts, who was really good as a rookie last year. I think the secondary is good here. I think the linebackers are good here. I do think they're good on the edge. I think this is a very good defense. I think there's enough talent on offense, especially up front. I mentioned with the line where I like their line. I like a lot of their skill positions. I think that once they get Tua Tagovailoa in at quarterback, I think if he just plays average and doesn't turn the ball over really, which will be determined.
Yeah, which has never happened.
Well, I mean, it happened when Miami went to the playoffs a couple of years. But if he can do that, if they can get that level of Tua, I think this is a team that could be frisky next year in a very bad division. And I think if I look at their roster top to bottom, I like this roster more than the other rosters in the NFC South. And that's where I draw the conclusion that I like this team to win the NFC South.
I think it's really interesting listening to Pete talk about rosters because he just picks a few people, but he doesn't look at the complete roster.
I was
This
just gonna
roster
say
has
this.
no depth at all.
Incredibly top-heavy roster.
Well, yes, they can say that about a lot of teams, though.
Yeah,
This-
but how do you
this
like
is-
this
this is
roster?
as
The Cardinals
top-heavy
roster.
as
Well,
it
you talked
gets.
about loving San Francisco, but that's a team, too, that you take away their starters. There's just not a lot there.
They made the playoffs with their starters hurt last year. That's my point. They
All
got
right, the
Also,
Falcons tied
but-
for first in the division last year.
But we're also eliminated
weakest
4
division
weeks
in the league.
prior. Also, we'll say Kyle Shanahan over Kevin Stefanski. There's my
you
Kyle
go.
Shanahan love.
Well,
Also, I think the story on Atlanta every year, too, is this team has never been short of talent, right? Even going back to 10 years ago, this team is always fast. This team is always physical. The defense, as of late, the last couple of years, their top end, their back end, everybody's physical and fast. They don't have the pass rush. They don't have the second level. They don't have the linebacking to stop the run. And the problem is right now, too, is we're talking about a team that has Tua and Michael Penix. This team is not going to win football games.
No, their quarterback room is very, very bad. I don't care
It's not
who's
possible.
starting for them.
It's
I don't
not
even care if
possible.
Tua's playing average, which is not going to happen. But even if Tua's playing average and not winning football games, this is where I'm at with the Falcons. They got pieces that I like. I love Drake London. I love Bijan Robinson. Their offensive line's solid, sure. Their defense is young. I like the Jalen Walker draft pick. The James Pierce one. It's tough to what he did this offseason because, again, I feel like that combination of Jalen Walker and him off the edge was great. I love Xavier Watts. I think he's a great young up-and-coming safety. Shout out Notre Dame, Pete. I like A.J. Terrell. I think he's one of the better corners in football. But, again, as in terms of depth, this team has no depth.
We're talking about a division that's going to take 8 games to win, by the way, too.
And
I don't think they can
I
win
don't
8
think they
games.
can do that.
Here's my thing with
They did it
Atlanta.
last year.
My thing with Atlanta is ultimately, and by the way, they got to 8 wins after they were eliminated. Let's make sure we understand this. When they were playing football games that mattered, they were horrible. That's just the truth. But when you look at this roster, I think if you ignored quarterback and took their top 10 guys on their roster, I think you could stack it up with a lot of the top teams in the NFL. The problem is guys 11 through 53 and the quarterback room just doesn't stack up. Bijan Robinson's great. I love Drake London. I love Kyle Pitts. A.J. Terrell. I love their safeties. But
yeah, Jesse Bates. I didn't even mention him. I like Jesse Bates.
The pass rush is not good enough. I don't think they're going to be able to stop the run. The offensive line has some very obvious glaring holes in it, most notably Jawaan Taylor, who we mentioned last week. I called it an upgrade that Kansas City didn't have to have Jawaan Taylor anymore. Now the Falcons get to have him, and he's playing right tackle. I got bad news for you. That's the blind side because they have only left-handed quarterbacks. So Jawaan Taylor is maybe the most important guy on this offensive line, and he's the worst guy on that unit. That's an issue.
Yeah, no, I agree. Kevin Stefanski, solid coach. I just don't think, like I talked about Kellen Moore, I like what Kellen Moore did last year. I've talked about these systems in the past. I don't think Kevin Stefanski is the type of coach that can take a team with holes and take them over the top. Again, he won Coach of the Year because of his defense, and he's an offensive-minded coach. This defense is young. Mike said it. They don't got necessarily the greatest pass rush and offense or defensive line, and again, it's a young team, and I just don't think that this team is a team that's gonna. I honestly think they could finish last in this division. I don't think it's.
I have them last in the division. I'll just say I have them at 7-10. That is last in this division.
Yeah.
And
I think I'm actually confident in saying that this will be the worst team.
For
No
me,
disrespect, this team dug too much of a hole last year, signing Kirk Cousins to
That was a bad
very
contract.
large contract.
That was a bad
And then
contract.
signing
Bad
Michael
choice in
Penix.
general.
I mean, let's be real.
That was an awful contract.
And
No
that hurt
qualms
your
there.
football team.
there's
But-
a lot of sunken cost over the last couple of years into this quarterback room, and absolutely none of it has paid dividends.
And that's where it hurts your depth.
This is just a division where any team could finish last and any team can finish first. I truly believe in the NFC South. I mean, we're talking about the Falcons won it last, or not the Falcons, excuse me, the Panthers won it last year, and I'm not overly impressed by the Falcons roster or anything the Panthers have going on really. So
There's a reason why this regime, by the way, was just entirely fired and turned over because they've been making bad decisions for a while.
Yeah.
Raheem Morris was not a good coach either. I think Kevin Stefanski's a huge upgrade over Raheem Morris, significant, where you could see dividends from that. I don't like Raheem Morris at all.
Yeah,
Great defensive coordinator.
I just don't feel great about this Falcons team. I really don't, and I get what you're saying. Any team feasibly could win this division because it's so bad, but to me, this is the team that I have the hardest time seeing a path for.
Let me ask you this, Mike. If we're here in December having this conversation and the Falcons have won the division, are you stunned? Are you like, oh my God, the Falcons
I would
won
be
the
surprised.
Probably
Yes,
gonna
I
be
would.
a
I
one
would
game
be.
difference.
Because I also
Yeah, it will be.
Probably gonna
No,
be one game.
I'm not claiming they're going to be great. They're going to be an 8 or 9 win team. It's division's
question,
bad.
My question for how the Falcons can win this division, again, I have them only a couple games out of winning it. But for me, when it comes down to it in close games, which you have to win in the NFL if you're going to be a division winner, they don't have the quarterback that can make the plays. And they're really,
they have
really
the worst
young.
quarterback room in the division.
I think comfortably.
Yeah, no, I agree. Comfortably. Tyler Shuck, I would take Tyler Shuck over them.
In a division with
I don't know.
a lot of messy quarterback situations, I think this is by far the worst.
What Tyler Shuck did at the end of last year is better than anything Michael Penix has done so far.
If we get
Yeah,
rookie Bryce Young shows up, that could be. I mean, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what Bryce
But
Young we get.
If we just
why
go
would
off
we get
of what
rookie-
we saw last season, what we saw most recently, Michael Penix and Tua Tagovailoa last year, if you ranked the quarterbacks in this division, they are below all three of the other starters.
Also-
Bryce Young was far better.
Yes.
Tyler Shuck was far better, and Baker Mayfield obviously is
Also,
on a different
why would
planet
we
than
get
these guys.
rookie
But yeah, I
Bryce
agree that
Young?
Baker Mayfield's no
Why would
question
we
the best
get rookie
quarterback
Bryce
in the
Young?
division.
He's not even a rookie anymore.
Well, I'm just saying he could regress to that play. There were times
I
last
doubt
year
it.
where he looked very bad in games. There were times last where you did get rookie Bryce Young in some games.
The Panthers ended the season fine. Again, we gotta
I would remind you how bad the roster was for rookie Bryce Young.
Yeah.
That guy was throwing to a bunch of dudes who are not in the league.
He was also just throwing the ball with no feet on the ground, looking terrible at times too. It wasn't all on the roster. There was some of it that was on
He
Bryce
didn't
Young.
play well, obviously. I'm not trying to
I'm not
defend Bryce Young's
yeah,
rookie year,
but I would rather have.
There were
him over
times
Michael
last year
Penix.
where some of the. I mean, let's remember too. Early last season, he got benched because he played so bad at the
I
beginning
mean,
of the
we're
season.
going to get to the Panthers. I'm
Yes.
not real high on
Yeah.
the Panthers either. I'm not sitting here
You can
telling you I
also-
love the Panthers.
You can
But
also argue that at their peak, that was the best defense in the division.
Yes.
You could.
No, I don't disagree with that. But yeah, I think that'll pretty much wrap up the Falcons. We've gone 23 minutes on the Falcons.
10 minutes a team.
the Falcons
And,
stink.
Yeah,
I'll say it now. If we are sitting here in December and the Falcons have
will be
won
surprised.
have won this division, I would genuinely be shocked, and I would have to sit here and say, Pete, you are absolutely right, because I just don't see how that happens.
Like Bijan Robinson might be offensive player of the year if they win the division.
I don't think it's impossible that Bijan Robinson wins
Like,
offensive player of the year.
that's how they win this
Bijan
division.
Robinson could win offensive player of the year and they still finish last place.
Yeah, but like my point is like I just don't think they win this division because Tua or Michael Penix.
And you want to know why that would happen? Because running backs don't matter. They don't equate to wins. That's how we end the segment.
All right, well, Mike Rose, hater of running back, known worldwide. But we're going to move on. We got the second-place team, a team that came out last year and looked like they might be a contender in the playoffs before kind of falling flat on their face, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we'll get to that in just a moment here on 1st and 15.
Now turn up your volume and join the team. Things are about to get started. It's 1st and 15.
When you walk into a home in Batavia, there's a good chance a piece of Max Pies furniture is part of that history. For over a century, they've been there, helping families furnish first apartments, first homes, and everything after that. Not a website, not a warehouse across the country, right here, local, family-owned. And right now, more than ever, local matters. If you've ever thought about stopping in, this is your moment. Max Pies Furniture, still here, still family, still Batavia, still where our customers send their friends.
Welcome back to 1st and 15 here on the WBTA Sports Network. Pete Zehler alongside Mike Rose, Tylor Klien, special guest Chris Geising, and Dakota Higgins here today. And we just wrapped up with the Atlanta Falcons. We're going to move on to the team that finished second place in the division last year. That is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And looking at their free agency, this might be the segment where I make up some of my time because they didn't do a whole lot this offseason. You want to talk about them. They picked up Alex Anzalone, however you want to say it. They picked him up to fill a hole at linebacker. Levante David may retire. That hasn't been announced yet. If he does, Anzalone will probably fill that role there. They bring back Cade Otton on a new deal. Kenneth Gainwell, they signed to be the backup to Rashad White. Or Rashad White's not expected to return, but he'll be the backup to Bucky Irving, rather. They get Ashawn Robinson, the defensive tackle. They pick up Muhammad, the linebacker, Al Quidin, I think is how you pronounce that. I'm famously not good with names, but they signed him. He had double-digit sacks last season. They get Jake Browning, who will probably be the backup to Baker Mayfield next year, and Miles Killebrew, the safety, joins them. He was a Pro Bowler in 2023 and 2024 as a special teamer. He'll probably be playing that special teams role once again in Tampa Bay this year. So not a lot there in terms of free agency. I mean, Anzalone and Gainwell are probably the two biggest new additions to this team, at least from this list I got. Sometimes Mike finds something I didn't see, but I didn't see a ton here.
All right, first of all, I had no idea that Al-Quayan Muhammad had 11 sacks last year. When the hell did that happen?
Very quietly.
And only got $4 million. So like he played his way into a big contract.
So maybe that's their best move.
I mean, maybe it is. I guess if he has 11 sacks again, I guess that works out for you. I mean, other than that, they really didn't do shit, if we're being honest. Like Cade Otton, great. They overpaid another running back. Overpaid. Kind of Gainwell's getting $7 million a year somehow. Anzalone's fine. He's been around, I feel like, half the league at this point to be a plug-in linebacker who just kind of is okay at his job but not great at his job. It's pretty underwhelming. I mean, there's not much here. They signed. I do have a take about Justin School, the left tackle they signed.
Okay.
Who's an ex-Minnesota Viking. He is one of the worst offensive linemen I have ever seen play the sport of football.
He was so bad ESPN didn't even put him on the list of signings.
I mean, he is truly atrocious. I mean, that guy should never step foot on a football field. I celebrated when I saw he signed somewhere else because I was really dreading the idea that Minnesota may bring him back because he started multiple games last year with Christian Darrisaw hurt, and I think he lost multiple games single-handedly for the Vikings last year.
I mean, this is going to be a recurring theme with this division. The depth is just not great. So the Alex Anzalone signing is really good for one purpose, and it's just a really thin linebacker room. And again, it's just it's not a really deep free agent class, so there's really not much to talk about. So
the real story of their free agency, let's be honest, is they lost Mike Evans. I mean,
absolutely.
That was the Buccaneers free agency, right? Like,
and I don't even feel that Mike Evans is obviously getting up there in age now, and last year he showed his first real signs of aging with some injury concerns. I mean, when he was on the field, he still looked fine, but that's going to hurt. Baker Mayfield's going to lose that safety blanket, but this is a team with a lot of receivers where it shouldn't probably hurt him too bad to lose Mike Evans. We'll get into that a little bit, though, when we get into our predictions and their roster and whatnot. Let's go through the draft, though. So in the first round, they pick up Ruben Bain Jr., the edge out of Miami, which I feel like Ruben Bain was an interesting draft pick because I saw him projected very high in some mock drafts, and I saw him going he was all over the place in mock drafts, and he ended up going right in the middle of the first round, pick 15 to Tampa Bay. So they pick up an edge rusher. That was a position of need for them. They will hope that he can fill a big role for him there. Second round, they pick up Josiah Trotter out of the linebacker out of Missouri. Third round, they go the wide receiver out of Georgia State, Ted Hurst, which they really don't need receivers, but I guess depth cannot hurt. Round 4, they pick up Keontae Scott, a corner out of Miami. Round 5, they go DeMonte Capehart, a defensive tackle out of Clemson. Also in the 5th round, they pick up a guard out of Wisconsin, Billy Schrouth. And in the 6th round, they get Bauer Sharp, the tight end out of LSU. So this is a draft, I'll be honest, past Ruben Bain, none of these were guys that I really knew a ton about here. And this wasn't my most educated draft I'd ever had, but these other teams we've been doing, I kind of knew a few guys till we got to the 2nd and 3rd round. This is a team I don't know a lot of. I know Ruben Bain. I like Ruben Bain generally, especially at pick 15. That's about my only take on this draft here for them.
Yeah, I do not like Ruben Bain. I think the arms are too short, which is...
That's been a big criticism against him.
Yeah, it's probably why he fell to 15 ultimately in the first round. Otherwise, like you said, he probably goes a lot higher in this draft, but I do have some concerns about how that translates. Josiah Trotter has NFL pedigree. His dad played in the NFL for a long time with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a guy I thought would be an interesting fit for the Bills, who I think a lot of people felt had a need at linebacker, and I was kind of examining him as a potential option on day 2 for the Bills, but he ultimately ends up in Tampa Bay. I think he's a good player. He's not going to replace, obviously, what Levante David brings to the table, but I think you pair him with Anzalone and whatever else they got there. I think he can make some plays. Ted Hurst is going to play more than you think.
Okay.
But he's not going to catch the ball a lot. He is going to run clear out routes crazy this year, though. He's going to be your classic X receiver that just runs go routes to create space for the guys who they actually want to throw the ball to. But I think he's going to play a lot more than people give credit for. And every once in a while, Baker's going to chuck one down to him, and he might be able to make a play. 6'4", he's got good speed.
Baker doesn't like to let it fly.
So he's gonna play though, because Tampa Bay rotates those receivers around, and Chris Godwin's aging, and we'll talk about the receiving room eventually. And then I have takes on Bauer Sharp because that's a former OU guy, another tight end. We told you it's the backup tight end episode, so I'd be remiss if we didn't bring up another backup.
This might be the division with the best backup tight ends in all of football.
But Bauer Sharp
just might also not be true.
Yeah, maybe we just like their backup tight ends the best of anyone in football. But Bauer Sharp is a fun 6th-round pick. I think he has a decent chance to make this roster. He's a pretty solid blocker. He's very good at the next level as a blocker, not as great at the initial point of attack. And he's a sneaky athletic guy who can make some plays with the ball in his hands. And there's the OU connection with him and Baker. So I think Bauer Sharp's got a shot to make this team. And there's not much behind Cade Otton, so it's a bunch of kind of nobodies after that. So I think Bauer Sharp's got a shot to maybe be the number 2 tight end by the end of the year. Who knows?
Yeah, Ruben Bain just had a long range of spots where he could have gone going into the draft, or I guess a little bit long before going into the draft, because the production in college was there, but this happens every year. Once we get to around the combine, everyone's like, oh, actually he has short arms and he's not a top 5 pick, even though the production might show that he's a top 5 pick or a top 10 pick. So I'm also not really a believer in the Ruben Bain the draft pick either. The short arms. I'm not,
just not a good track record of it. Yeah. I don't like betting on outliers. That's one thing you'll learn about me if you listen to the show. I just there's no logical reason why you should bet on outliers ever at any point in anything in life. So I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, other than that, I got nothing else.
Yeah, it's not a pick that I'm married to. Yeah. I will say, I guess in a weaker draft, he's a guy that did show, especially in the college football playoffs, he can play. So I kind of get why they took a flyer on him in a position of need. But I don't really have a ton to really say past that. So let's talk about this roster and get into predictions here. So as we've said with pretty much every team, once again, this team could win the division. If they win the division, I won't be surprised. If they finish, this is the team I think with maybe the highest floor out of all the teams in the NFC South. I say that, but I will say I really don't like their defense. I'm very anti this defense. Their secondary might be one of my least favorite in the NFL. I don't like anything they really got going on at corner. Anton Winfield's a great safety.
We don't like Antoine Winfield?
No, I'm not saying he's not. he is really great, but past him, there's just not a lot I like on this defense. A lot of unproven guys. Tyke Smith, you have Zion McCollum's going to line up at left corner. It looks like you got Benjamin Morrison on the other side. These just aren't really proven guys to me that I'm very excited to. Nothing really excites me there in that secondary. I have some concerns about. I mean, if those are the guys that are starting for you, I have a lot of concern about the depth you have in the secondary. Looking at their line, what they got, Ruben Bain, he probably will mix in as a starter, I would imagine. I do like Vita Vea. He's a great run stopper, big guy up front. That is a spot in their defense I do like. But once again, the linebacker room, you got Roseboom, you got Anzalone, guys that have been productive in the past, but nothing about this defense excites me. This defense concerns me. We say that every team doesn't have depth, but I don't even know if I like the starters to begin with too much here for Tampa Bay. Offensively, obviously, I like what they have going on offensively. Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback in the division. Baker Mayfield, last year, he was like mid-October, he was probably the MVP of the NFL. Like, he was having a phenomenal start to the year. Everyone really liked the way Baker Mayfield was playing. It looked like it was going to be a race between him and Matt Stafford. They started to trail off a little bit, and so did the MVP talks there with Baker. But he's got a plethora of weapons. If Emeka Egbuka can play like he did at the start of last season, obviously he showed that he has legit top 10 wide receiver skill set. Jalen McMillan's a guy that kind of got lost in that loaded receiver room, but I know that's a guy that they were very excited about in Tampa Bay. He was a big training camp story. Didn't really get to show a ton last year, but when he did, he was productive. He's a guy that will get more playing time now. I do think Chris Godwin's taken a little bit of a step back. Last year, it seemed like he just kind of lost a little bit of a step when he was on the field. I do think that he probably loses playing time over the year to some of these other guys like Hurst, who Mike mentioned, and Tez Johnson that got some play time last year, and Cameron Johnson, who's deeper on this depth chart here for them. The tight ends, we mentioned them. Cade Otton's a perfectly fine tight end. We'll see what comes up behind him. And this is an offensive line that I do like as well. They have some guys on this line. I think this is a very good offensive line. And obviously Bucky Irving at running back as well. Very good running back. Point being, I like the offense. I think this is a very good offense for Tampa Bay. The defense does concern me quite a bit. But I'd say out of all the teams, I think they probably have the highest floor. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the division. As of today, I'm picking them to finish second in the division. But once again, no team's going to truly stun me if they win this division.
Last year, we had a three-way tie, 10 of the division, right? I think this year, those three teams, if I had to project it, it's instead of the Falcons, I think the Falcons are last. I think the Saints step up. I think that three-way kind of tie, that like one-game separation maybe, I think is between the Buccaneers, Panthers, and Saints for me. I'm going to pick the Buccaneers to win this division, and I don't feel great about it. You know, we talked about with the Falcons the last time we just broke down how I'm a really big Tua hater. I'm a massive Todd Bowles hater. I think he is one of the worst head coaches in the NFL, and the fact that he has a job is insane to me. Especially with I talked about it with the Panthers, and I will talk about it with the Panthers, and I talked about it with the Saints. You know how well the Saints ended the year. The Buccaneers ended the season very badly, and Todd Bowles should have been blamed for that. The fact that he still has a job is insane. But somehow, some way, I'm gonna pick this team to win the division, and it has nothing to do with Todd Bowles. I'm just gonna pick the best quarterback in the division. I do like this offense, and maybe it's because I still have like the Liam Cohen Buccaneers offense in the back of my mind, and that's why I like this offense. But I don't know. I like Baker. I trust Baker. We talked about it a little bit off air. I do like this wide receiver room. Bucky Irvin's solid. The offensive line's bad. The offensive line has a lot of questions, especially if Tristan Wirth is out for the entire season.
I only like this offensive line if Tristan Wirth's healthy.
Yeah, but like
sure.
Even if he's there, like it's not like they have anything else. You know, it's just
I like
one
Graham
guy.
Barton.
I'm not in love with this offensive line, so I'm just putting all of my stock really in just Baker Mayfield in this wide receiver room, and then some of the other pieces around offensively, because the defense it's got pieces. I mean, Vita Vea has been one of the better defensive tackles in football since he's been drafted in the league. So, like, they have guys, but you know, it's just this is a tough division to kind of project things, and so I'm just going to put my stock in the best quarterback in the division. So that's where I'm at with the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I don't feel great about the Buccaneers. I hear what you're saying, that they have potentially the highest floor, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that
they have the best quarterback.
They have by far the best quarterback in Baker Mayfield, but I wouldn't be surprised if the bottom falls out on this team this year. As Tyler mentioned, I don't love the coaching. Todd Bowles has proven that he's not really a very good NFL head coach. By the way, if I'm the running back guy, Tyler's absolutely the coaching guy at this point. Just throwing that out.
That's fair.
No, that is absolutely right. I agree.
I look at this offense, and I think there's a lot of potential things that I could like. Like, I like Tristan Wirfs at left tackle, but the rest of the offensive line, like Tyler mentioned, I don't love it. Cade Otton, I think, has some upside as a tight end, but he's not going to light the world on fire. I look at the wide receiver room. You mentioned Egbuka flashed last year, but he was also really bad to end the year.
Bad end of the year, terrible.
Jalen McMillan has flashed, but he had that really bad neck injury that cost him a lot of last season. We didn't really get to see him take a step forward.
Mike, actually, real quickly here, I want to just point out how terrible the Buccaneers were on their downfall last year. We have Cody Higgins in the room here right now. And last year in our Dynasty Fantasy Football League, Higgins started the year 9-0. His starting quarterback was Baker Mayfield. His starting wide receiver was Emeka Egbuka. And he ended the year going 1-9 and missing the playoffs. And it all aligns with the Buccaneers.
I thought I was made of steel for about half a
I think they
season.
had the worst record in the NFL the last 8 weeks.
They were atrocious.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, Mike, but I wanted to give
No.
that real-world
It
example.
really hurt to watch, too, man. I was really confident.
I will say in my Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues, I traded Emeka Egbuka like crazy when he started going nuts early in the year because everybody was like, oh, my God, he's the best young receiver in football. I'm like,
still
please
believe.
take him.
I still believe.
And I was able to get Malik Neighbors and a first-round pick in one of my trades, so I feel pretty good about that coming back this year.
That's crazy.
But
that is a
Wow.
crazy
I'm
trade.
incredibly jealous of that.
yeah, so that was fun. But yeah, go and look at this wide receiver. I mean, Chris Godwin, like you mentioned, looks like he's losing a step. Behind that, Tez Johnson, he's fine, but
Kinda small.
He's very
Yeah.
small. He's incredibly small. He does backflips though. If you've never seen Tez Johnson do a backflip,
Great athlete.
and he's Bo Nix's adopted brother. So if you don't know that story, you should look it up. We're not going to talk about it right now though. Defensively, I actually like their secondary more than anything on this defense, which I guess should tell you a lot about how I view this defense.
You must
But
hate this defense.
this defense is terrible. This linebacker room is god awful, if we're being honest. Trotter, if he can step in as a rookie and be a contributor, it would go a long way because Anzalone is a guy, Roseboom is a guy, Yaya Diaby is a guy. Like none of these guys are game breakers. They're Jags, if we're just being honest.
Well, they're not just guys; they're older guys that could regress too.
Correct.
So you're not riding the Bain train.
And then up front, you got Ruben Bain, who I already mentioned I'm not in on. So that pretty much leaves you with Vita Vea as your only kind of trusted option in your front. They have no real pass rushing at all. I mean, they have Kalijah Cansey, who they burned a high pick on a couple years ago that's developed into nothing. I mean, they genuinely may need El Quade Muhammad to get sacks for them to have any kind of a
When you have a
pass
20-sack season,
because they have nothing up front, I feel like. In the back end, I actually like Tyke Smith. He had an underrated year last year. I really like Antoine Winfield, obviously. Ben Morrison is a guy who I was really high on coming out of the draft, out of your boys at Notre Dame.
Yep.
But he had the knee injury that obviously hurt his stock a little bit. But I think after being able to get some games on the field last year, I think if he can come back this year and be healthy, he could emerge as potentially a number one cornerback option. So I actually like the secondary. I just think the rest of this defense outside of Vita Vea is just complete garbage.
And even with what you said with the secondary, that's still at best an average secondary
Right.
with you looking at it on a positive light.
Right, and the reality is, like, Tyke Smith could just, like, take a step back and Ben Morrison could get hurt, and their secondary is going to get carved to pieces by even the likes of Tua Tagovailoa and Bryce Young and Tyler Shuck. So if the bottom falls out on the Buccaneers this year and they finish dead last, I wouldn't be that surprised. If they win the division, I also wouldn't be that surprised. I have them finishing second behind my New Orleans Saints, who I'm adopting as my team now for the year because of how this episode has gone. And I have them finishing 8-9, under 500. I just don't think there's a ton of upside with this roster, how it is. And so for me, like 9 wins feels like a ceiling for me with the talent that they have.
I agree. I think I wouldn't be surprised if any of the Saints, Buccaneers, or Panthers win the division. I will not be surprised if any of those three. I will be surprised if the Falcons win, though.
Yeah. For me, when I look at it, I just think the reason I picked the Saints when I did is I just feel like their path, given A, that they finish last, so they get the benefit of the last place schedule, and B, their roster stacked up to these other teams, I think less has to break correctly for them to win the division. For Tampa Bay, it just feels like a lot of pieces, like Emeka Egbuka has to step up and be a wide receiver 1 this year, or that offense is not going to be anywhere near where we think it is. Bucky Irving is going to have to stay healthy, or they're not going to be able to run the ball the way they have previously, because Rachaad White is gone and he's not coming back. So, I mean, there's a lot.
Tristan Wirth needs to stay healthy.
Tristan Wirth has to stay healthy, or that offensive line is going to fall apart.
A lot of this team just needs to stay healthy.
I mean, the same thing that we do say that about like every team.
Yeah, but this
don't
team also has just a history with injuries.
You don't have a walking guaranteed 1,000 yards at wide receiver and Mike Evans anymore. Like I think we underappreciate how stable he has made this offense over his decade-long career.
He's
in
a
the
Hall of
NFL.
Famer.
He's going to the Hall of Fame for a reason. And to have a guy who, without a doubt, is just going to get 1,000 yards every season and score double-digit touchdowns and not have to think about it, like, what are the Buccaneers going to do when they get down the red zone? How often last year did you watch the Buccaneers get into the red zone and say, okay, we got Mike Evans over there one-on-one, let's throw it up to him and have him go catch it? Who's going to be that guy now? I don't see it on this roster. Ted Hurst is not coming in as a rookie and doing that. Who's making up for that red zone production?
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, because Bucky Irvin's not running between the tackles down near the
they'll probably
goal
try to
line.
force it to Ibuka if I had to take a guess, and I just don't think he's that guy.
Kenneth Gainwell is not running between. I mean, are we
Payne
relying
Durham.
on Sean
Durham,
Tucker?
he says.
Are we relying on Cole
Well,
Keefe?
what
I mean, what are we going to do
This
here?
is the backup tight end episode. Payne Durham's going to do that.
I'm more of a
Payne Durham,
I'm
baby.
more of a
Let's
Cole
go.
Keefe guy.
All right, well, that, I think, wraps up everyone's take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here in the NFC South. We have one team left to go, the team that won the division, a team that I don't think a single one of us are picking to win the division again this year.
No.
That is the Carolina Panthers. So stay tuned. We'll be right back on 1st and 15.
Every single step. Now turn up your volume and join the team. Things are about to get started. It's 1st and 15.
Welcome back to 1st and 15 here on the WBTA Sports Network. Pete Zehler of WBTA alongside my good pal Mike Rose from the Batavia Daily News, Tylor Klien, WBTA NFL analyst, along with special guest Christopher K.G. Geising and Dakota Higgins here. And, we've gone through the first three teams in the division. And now we got to get to the team that actually won the division last year and what was a dramatic race to win this division that ended in a three-way tie, the Carolina Panthers, who kind of came out of nowhere last year to win this division. Let's start, as always, by talking about their free agency moves, which, by the way, last three teams we were all like, man, they did nothing or they did nothing we liked. This is a team that actually made some decent free agency moves after winning the division. So going down through it, Jalen Phillips, they signed the former Eagle to a 4-year, $120 million deal with $80 million in guarantees. That's a massive contract, but Jalen Phillips was phenomenal last season. They get Kenny Pickett to be backup quarterback. They get Devin Lloyd, the former Jaguar, to a 3-year, $45 million deal. They signed Luke Fortner to a 1-year contract up to $4.75 million. Probably might slot in at center, might be the backup center on this team, to be determined. They signed Stone Forsythe to a 1-year deal. They get Rasheed Walker at left tackle to a 1-year contract. They bring in John Mechie, who was a guy that I used to be pretty high on, but unfortunately his career has just not panned out the way I'd hoped it would. They get the former Texans wide receiver, though, to a 1-year deal. Bring in A.J. Dillon, who I can't believe still in the NFL, to a 1-year contract. And that's all the moves.
He's not making this team, by the way.
And that's all the moves out on my end. I liked A.J. Dillon come out of the draft, too, and he just sucked in the NFL.
I didn't like him come out of the draft, even. Shocking. I didn't like another running back.
The former Green Bay Packer. But, yeah, so that's their free agency moves. And, I mean, we'll just talk. We're kind of talking a little bit off air, but, Mike, what they did up front, I mean, they really were aggressive in taking an already team that I felt was pretty good off the edge and good up front, and they just upgraded a position of strength, essentially.
I mean, yeah, Devin Lloyd's a guy who probably had a case to win Defensive Player of the Year last year on a really good Jaguars defense. He made a lot of big plays, pretty much won them that game against Kansas City, which ended up being, big for them in terms of making the postseason with that 100-yard pick six. And he's a guy who I think got underpaid, which almost never happens in NFL free agency. I feel like guys only get overpaid in NFL free agency. Somehow he only ended up getting $14 million a year. I know linebackers don't get paid notoriously well in the NFL, but for a guy who has an argument to be, the best linebacker in the NFL potentially, I think that's a heist of a number for Carolina. And then they signed Jalen Phillips to a massive contract. He's going to come in and should be, arguably their best pass rusher almost immediately, I would think.
Yeah.
He comes in there. He's going to add a really big element to their pass rush up front. And, you add those two guys to a defense that was already pretty solid, like you said, Pete. This defense could really go to another level this year. Devin Lloyd really elevated the Jaguars' defense last year to a level that I don't think anybody really thought it could reach. So it'll be interesting to see if you add him and what Phillips could bring up front with some sack numbers, how good this defense can really be.
I had my eye on both Jalen Phillips and Devin Lloyd going into this offseason as a Raiders fan because those two guys were rumored to the Raiders, mainly because the Raiders just had so much money to spend, and those were both positions of need for the Raiders. I'm very happy we didn't get Jalen Phillips. I thought Jalen Phillips was overpaid, and I think, especially with his injury history, I don't necessarily think he deserves that kind of money. Devin Lloyd, though, I do think was, I agree with Mike. I think he was underpaid. Regardless, though, whether Jalen Phillips was overpaid, underpaid, or whatever, this team had a lot of money. This is a young roster. I think it's good to invest this kind of money into a player that can immediately make an impact on this team. Devin Lloyd, same thing. So yeah, I mean, I like the Panthers going into this offseason with the aggressive mindset and free agency. I think it makes a ton of sense, especially like we already said, young team. They have a quarterback who's on a rookie contract. We've already said this a number of times on the show. When you have a rookie quarterback contract, you go out and you try to be aggressive around it. And I think the Panthers did that this offseason, and we'll talk about where I project them going into the season, but I like the free agency class.
So that's the free agent moves. Let's talk about the draft a little bit now. First round, they go and pick up Monroe Freeling, the tackle out of Georgia, to shore up the offensive line, which, truthfully, that was probably one of their biggest issues last year, was that offensive line. Bryce Young didn't get great protection. I feel like he got better as the year went on. They kind of gelled more as a group. Certainly needed some help, though. They got the tackle in Monroe Freeling. Second round, they go get Lee Hunter, the defensive tackle out of Texas Tech, continue to shore up the defensive front. Third round, they get Chris Brazzell, the second, a wide receiver out of Tennessee, a guy actually I was really high on coming out of the draft. I had him circled as a guy I wanted the Bills to maybe take. Didn't. He went to Carolina, but they get him, and he'll be good depth in that receiver room in Carolina. They get Will Lee III, the quarterback out of Texas A&M. They get in the fifth round, they take Sam Hecht, the center out of Kansas State. Also in the fifth round, they take the safety out of Penn State, Zakee Wheatley. And in the seventh round, they take the Miami of Ohio linebacker, Jackson Kawach. And that is the draft for the Carolina Panthers there. Overall, for me, I feel like they did a good job addressing some positions of need. I think Freeling was a good pickup for them. I'm not going to act like I was terribly versed on him coming into the draft, but they needed tackle help. They go and get the best tackle available in that position. And in the second round, they shore up their defensive front. We talk about how good we like their edge rushers and their defensive front. Probably the weakest part of that defensive front is their second defensive tackle. So if Hunter's a guy they think can come in and compete for that spot, that's certainly not a bad pick whatsoever, and I don't hate taking that pick in the second round.
Yeah, I'm not terribly high on this draft, I'll be honest. I think Freeland's a little raw. I'll be curious to see if he plays right away or not, because their tackles aren't great, but they have Ika Mukamwu on at left tackle, and then Taylor Moton at right tackle. I wouldn't be surprised if Moton starts the year over Freeland.
Yeah, they don't need him to start right away, I would say.
Moton's also just a little bit more, he's an older guy, more experienced. So.
Yeah, so I'll be curious to see how that plays out. Lee Hunter, I'll be honest, I don't know absolutely anything about Lee Hunter, so I'm not going to pretend sit here like I do. Chris Brazzell, I hate Tennessee wide receivers because they don't ever have to run any routes. So yeah. I just automatically am out on all Tennessee wide receivers. All they know how to do is run straight. He's big. He's fast.
He's a lot like Dante Thornton from last year.
That's why he gets drafted in the third round. He's big and fast. He doesn't really have many.
Not really physical at all.
No, not physical. Not a good route runner. I don't like Chris Brazzell, if I'm being honest. And we will probably never at any point on this show talk about a Tennessee wide receiver I like, because I think their entire offense is based on the idea of just let's play really fast and catch you off guard. And Jalen Hyatt was another highly drafted Tennessee wide receiver who's done absolutely nothing in the NFL because he's big and fast and can't actually do anything else, and just got all of his yards in college by being big and fast and the other team being out of position because they ran no huddle.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about Chris Brazzell. I think he stinks. The rest of this draft's kind of a nothing burger to me. So I like what Carolina did in free agency. As much as I like what they did in free agency, I probably dislike the draft to the same extent.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm in the same spot as well.
All right, so we'll move on now to kind of our predictions for this team. So we had a conversation in between segments here, and Mike Rose was starting to really sell me on this team. He was selling himself at the same time on this team as well, to be honest with you. And, I look at this defense, and when I really look at the depth they have, I think this is easily the best defense in this division. I like some of the guys Atlanta has up front, but they don't have a lot of depth there. I like some of the guys, to be honest, I don't like a ton of what Tampa Bay has at all, but they definitely don't have any depth. And the Saints, I feel like, is an older defense without a ton of depth there. This is a defense that it's young, and it has a lot of depth all over the place. J.C. Horn, a guy that I can't remember if we've mentioned yet or not, but you could argue that he's a top 5 corner in football. I don't think
you could argue he's the best corner in football.
You could. I wouldn't put him over Surtain.
I wouldn't put him over Pat Surtain. I know you're not going to. But I think there's people out there who would. I'm not going to, but there's people who would.
When he's on the field, you absolutely can say, hey, he's a top 3 corner, and no one's going to really blink an eye at that. I think he's fantastic. Derek Brown, just phenomenal up front. He's a guy that seems to get better each and every year. And, we just talk about all the moves they make. I love the Jalen Phillips signing. They bring in Devin Lloyd. That's going to be a nasty team to face up front. They're going to really get after quarterbacks. And their secondary is a secondary secondary that I like. We mentioned J.C. Horn. I also like Mike Jackson as a second cornerback. I mean, Trayvon Moehrig, Nick Scott, those are just kind of guys at safety. I don't think they're really detrimental to your defense in any way. But to be honest with you, when you have as good of corners as you do and you have as good of edge rushers as you do, you don't really need your safeties to be superstars. I think this is the best defense easily in the division. Where I get a little concerned. So first off, by the way, this is the backup tight end episode. This is the one team that I do not like. I don't even like their starting tight end in Carolina. This is probably the.
You don't like Notre Dame.
Tommy Tremble sucks.
Tommy Tremble.
Tommy Tremble sucks. He's one of the few Notre Dame guys.
Mark this down. We found a Notre Dame guy that beat us.
That's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. I never thought the day would come.
If they got Austin Hooper, he'd be the best tight end in this room. This is
not a chance.
You could argue this. You could make
Super Bowl.
you could make the argument this is the worst tight end room in football. This is not a good tight end room.
Watch Austin Hooper since
When's the last time you saw Austin Hooper play football?
The Patriots.
I mean, not last year. It couldn't have been.
No. Listen, he's just a backup tight end. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and catch 1,000 yards.
Tommy Tremble and Jatavion Sanders clear anything Austin Hooper can do at this point.
Absolutely.
This, regardless of the point, we're getting a little in the weeds here.
Felipe Franks,
the former Miami quarterback, Felipe Franks. This could be the worst tight end room in football. I would need to see them all side by side, but this is not a good tight end room. The receivers, you have a lot of. First off, I love Tet McMillan. I'm a known Tet McMillan lover. He is phenomenal. We're going to get into a guy that Mike likes in a little bit here. I will tell you, I am equally as high on Tet McMillan. I loved him in the draft. He looked all the part of a number one receiver last year for Carolina. He was huge for Bryce Young. He was excellent. So their depth, it's kind of like how you feel about it, I guess, because I will tell you, I don't think Xavier Legette's very, very good. I'm just middle of the pack on Jalen Coker, not as high as some people are. I mentioned I like Chris Brazil. He obviously has to prove himself in the NFL first, though. John Mechie III, I used to like him. I've kind of let that train sail, but I guess we'll see if he can get some playing time in this offense. But yeah, so the receiver room, love Tet McMillan. A lot of question marks past that. Up front on this offensive line, as Mike mentioned, this is an offensive line that struggled last year. We'll just kind of have to see how it gels. And they did get better as the year went on. They improved. They were an improved effort. Bryce Young, I don't think we've talked a ton about him up to this point, but he got better as the year. He got benched to start the year last year in Carolina, missed, I believe, about the first month of the year after getting benched, came back, and he played perfectly acceptable football to lead them to the playoffs. Bryce Young, we'll have to see how he continues into this year playing. The running back room I don't necessarily love. They lose Rico Dowdle, who was fantastic for them. They won games because of Rico Dowdle last year, and they lose him. Chuba Hubbard didn't really look like he gelled in this offense last year. Jonathan Brooks, the third-year running back who's never seen the field, might get a chance this season. We might get a look at him. And that's kind of to be determined. Same with Trevor Etienne, who's also sitting on this depth chart. We haven't seen a lot of him yet up to this point. To kind of just gel that whole point together that I've made, though, I feel like this offense, outside of Tet McMillan, is a lot of really unproven guys, and I just kind of got to see what it's going to look like before I feel strongly either way. But I love the defense, and, if the offense can be average, Mike might have sold me in between segments on this team being able to compete in this division, compete for the win. The only thing that I don't like is their schedule. They got a first-place NFC schedule. That means they're going to have to play teams like the Rams. They're going to have to play all the division winners from last year, the Eagles, all these teams that were very strong last season. And I like them. I don't like them to beat teams like that, though. And then that's kind of where I'm at with the Panthers right now.
All right, so here's what I'm going to say. I told you in the first segment that I predicted the schedules for each team in the NFL, and so I had some records. Between segments, I was looking at the Panthers roster, and I go, man, this record doesn't make any sense to me. And so between segments, I have bumped the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down a game, and I flipped a result in a Buccaneers-Panthers game to be a Panthers win. So I have the Buccaneers as a 7-win team.
Bookies in Vegas are panicking as Mike does that.
Yeah, I'm revising my Tampa Bay Buccaneers take. They're down to a 7-win team for me. I have the Panthers at an 8-9 season. I have them second place behind the Saints still. Would I be surprised they won the division? No. I think the Panthers have the best team in this division. I think this is the best roster in the division.
I agree.
I think it's by far the best defense.
Yep.
My issue is the schedule, ultimately. They play an absolute murderer's row of a schedule. Like, I'm not kidding. I went between segments, and I really tried to go through. I went game by game. I'm like, the Panthers got to be able to have more wins.
You were trying to give them wins.
Board. I was dying to, because I'm looking at this roster. I'm like, man, I really like this team. I just couldn't find those games because it's just a really tough schedule. When you look at this roster, I mean, Pete mentioned a lot of what I like about the defense already. Phillips, Lloyd, I like Nick Scorton, Derek Brown, J.C. Horn. It's a loaded defense. It really is. Offensively, if you believe in Bryce Young, then the Panthers should be pretty good. I don't love Bryce Young. I'm not out on Bryce Young. I was a Bryce Young believer coming out of the draft. I'm not ready to give up yet. I think.
Which I want to say, Mike, that's insane for you that you were a Bryce Young believer with his size, because you mentioned just a few minutes ago you believe in physical traits, you believe in what you can see. So that really says you must have really loved Bryce Young if you believed in him.
Young. I did. There was a time I thought the Panthers won that trade that they made to trade up to get Bryce Young. And obviously they got absolutely rinsed in that deal with the Bears. But ultimately, I still have a belief in Bryce Young that he can be, a franchise caliber quarterback long term. When I look at these running backs, Chuba Hubbard's fine. Jonathan Brooks is whatever. Trevor Etienne, I think, may end up being the guy who gets a surprising amount of work out of this backfield, probably more than people think. Travis's brother there in Carolina. I wouldn't be surprised if he works in as more of the number 2. I just am not a big fan of Jonathan Brooks' game, and he's had 2 really tough injuries 2 years in a row. I just don't know what's left in the tank at this point. I love Jalen Coker. I know Pete says he's not sure about Jalen Coker, but I love Jalen Coker. He's an analytical darling. He is a guy who, when he's been given the opportunity, he has excelled. Came out of Holy Cross a couple years ago. You come out of Holy Cross, you got to be really damn good to make a roster, let alone become an impact player. And this guy has solidified himself, I think, firmly as the wide receiver 2 on this team in front of Xavier Legat, who I think is terrible. And I think Coker is a legitimate NFL wide receiver 2. I think I would argue he's in the upper half of NFL wide receiver 2s in the NFL, personally. I think there's a lot of upside with Coker. I think he's a future 1,000-yard receiver at some point in his NFL career. I love Tet McMillan as well. So I like that 1-2 punch and what they bring to the table, and I think they have kind of differing skill sets. McMillan, more of a bigger guy who can go up but still has, the ability to win. He's not just a big guy. He's not like Chris Brazil, who's just big and fast. And then Coker, who's more of a, he can win downfield, but he's also a good route runner. He has a full complement of his route tree. So I feel good about what they have with those 2, and if Xavier Legat can give you anything, then I think you'll be okay. The offensive line, hopefully, we get more of what they saw in the second half of the season than the first half of the season from that unit. I think there's a lot of upside with this team. Like I said, I think this is the best roster. I just worry about the schedule. But listen, if they come out and they can steal a couple of these tougher games, don't be surprised if the Panthers win 10, 11 games. I mean, that's the first time I've said that about any of these teams. I'm picking the Saints to win the division, but if anybody's going to ultimately just run away with this division, if it's not going to be like a 3-team pile up in the middle of just kind of mediocrity, this is the team that's capable of actually showing up and being a legitimate division-winning caliber NFL team and winning 11 games or 12 games this year if they can steal a couple of these tough games that you look at in a vacuum and you're like, they're probably not going to win this. But if they take a couple of those, I think there's a lot of upside with the talent that's on this roster.
I absolutely agree with Mike. I
love when you agree with me.
Yep. No, I mean, going into today, I was just thinking about today's episode, and I said this off air. Going into today, I had the Panthers winning this division based off the roster. I completely agree. This is the best roster, on paper in this division. But again, the schedule. Mike's talked about it. That's for me. I just don't think that they can win some of these games. If you look at them, it's like I gotta pull it back up. I just had it up. I was looking at their 2025 schedule. I said that they ended the year really well. They actually didn't end the year that great. They kind of just had a really good middle of the season more than they had a good end of the season, but that's besides the point. But just some of these teams that they're playing, I mean, they gotta play the Ravens, they gotta play the Bengals, they gotta play the Broncos, they gotta play the Packers, the Lions in week 3, in week 4. They gotta play the Eagles. These are all teams that I like. It's for them. It's how are they going to do it against their division? If they can just go perfect against their division opponents, then this is a team that's making the playoffs, obviously. But I don't know. I don't know if I like them against some of these teams that I mentioned. And I said it earlier. I don't love it, but I'm picking the Buccaneers. And again, I don't feel great about it, but I completely agree with Mike. I think if this team can win some of these games against these tougher opponents, they will absolutely win this division. Things that I like about this team too is the defense. And I pulled this up to Higgins earlier because I'm just going to butcher this dude's name.
I saw him do it.
How do you say this?
I'm going to say Hiro Evero.
Yep. That is a defensive coordinator that you guys need to remember because he is going, especially if this goes well, this defense goes well, he will be a head coach next year. He is a very good defensive coordinator, and he did great last year. And if this defense, like I said, it goes as planned, he will be a head coach next year, and I think he will be a big part of the reason why this.
In Denver?
Yes.
For time?
Yes, and he was also in contention for the Raiders. If the Raiders didn't get Clint Kubiak, he probably would have been our head coach.
All right.
I don't think I've ever heard his name out loud. I was just like trying to picture what it looked like.
I don't think I've ever heard his name out loud
I'm completely guessing.
He was the Broncos defensive coordinator in 2022.
Also want to quickly agree with Mike.
KG, you're the
Tyler,
Broncos
too.
expert. Tell us how to say his name.
I'm not pronouncing that. So I do want to also agree with Tyler and Mike also quickly. I think it's a quarterback-driven league, so it's easy to say Baker Mayfield is going to lead the Buccaneers to a division, title. But I think looking at the Panthers team, it's obvious that this team is the deepest team in the division. This comes down to Bryce Young, right? Is he going to play with that confidence that beat the Rams once in the regular season, and also almost beat them in the playoffs?
Yeah, he showed up against them in the
what I
playoffs.
mean? And he proved that he can do it.
Yeah.
Right. So is he going to step up with that confidence next year? Because if he does, and he can do that consistently, that's their division. There's no question. No question.
Absolutely. I mean, the growth of Bryce Young is very important because if he takes another step this year, again, we talk about some of these tougher games that we think that we don't think they will win, but if he does take that step and has another year of development and is able to win some of these tough games, that's exactly it. Like they're gonna handily win this division.
Correct.
No, and go ahead, KG.
I was gonna say he's definitely capable. And to be honest with you, coming out of the draft, I think it was two and a half years ago now.
Yeah,
almost 2.5. I definitely was a Bryce Young hater. I didn't think he had the physical attributes.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think he had the arm strength or the size, and he's definitely proven people wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, coming out of Alabama, I liked him over C.J. Stroud, and I lost that at one point.
Not.
After I liked him over C.J. Stroud, I was kind of with Mike. I just saw something in him at Alabama where you could just see that kid could play. And whenever he was throwing with no feet on the ground, he kind of lost me a little bit, and I got off the Bryce Young bandwagon for a bit. And I was I think one of my favorite stories of last year was the Bryce Young redemption, watching him play like I felt like he could early in his career. It was fun because by all accounts, Bryce Young seems like a really nice kid. Every interview he does, everyone just seems to really like Bryce Young. And it was good to see his redemption. I do hope he can continue to improve this year. He's a good story in the NFL. I'll be curious to watch his progression, see if this wide receiver room around him can improve well, see if this offensive line can improve. And, kind of tying back to the start of this episode, I talked about that I think the team that gets the most divisional wins could win this division this year.
Yep.
And I mean, yeah, it's a tough record outside this division, but to be honest with you, none of these teams might win a lot of non-divisional games, even against mediocre competition. So I certainly think if Carolina's head and heels better than division, they sweep the division. I mean, if they can just find a couple other wins, that could be enough to win the NFC South this year. So I don't hate that. I'm still picking them to finish third, but Mike kind of talked me into being hesitant about that.
Well, I mean, like you said that about the division, like that's kind of like the point with me and Mike about the Saints. Like, the Saints might not win a lot of division games, but I think they'll just win a lot of out of the division games, and then all of a sudden they got a couple more wins.
I don't think these teams are going to be that bad outside the division. Because I don't think these teams are like all just like garbage. I think Atlanta might suck.
Atlanta's bad.
I'm not scared of the Panthers being 4-2 in the division.
No,
I think they still have a chance.
Yeah, no, I think they could go 6-0, and it wouldn't stun me, to be honest with you.
Like I don't think like if you stack these teams up against the other teams in the NFC, like I don't think they're just like the bottom 4 teams in the NFC or anything.
No,
like these,
no.
Like I think all these teams are better than the Giants and
You're that low on the Giants?
Yeah.
Wow, that kind of surprised me.
They're better than Arizona. I think they probably could be better than Washington. I think they a decent chance these teams are better than like Dallas or San Francisco. Like I don't think these teams are just like all garbage piles that are just going to get kind of trampled over all year.
It's hard. I feel like besides Arizona, it's hard to name a non-competitive team in the NFC.
I'm decently high on the Giants. I'm kind of surprised you're like
it's a talented and tough team.
I'm surprised you're in that
like
tier
Jackson
with the Giants. To be honest,
I mean,
we'll save that for the NFC East when we get to it. But
I don't know where you want me to put the Giants. You look at the rest of the NFC. You tell me where you want me to put the Giants because that like I don't know.
No, this isn't the episode to get into the Giants. I almost drug us down a road we weren't trying to go down tonight. But so that will kind of summarize the NFC South this year. So I think in conclusion, I will say Mike has really talked me into the Panthers, and I kind of like the Panthers a bit.
The irony is that I didn't even pick the Panthers.
No, you didn't.
That's the best part.
That's the best football team in the NFC.
Mike talking himself into the Panthers almost talked me into the Panthers. But I'm going to stay with my pick. I'm going with the Falcons. Tyler's got the Buccaneers. Mike has the Saints. KG has the Panthers. We all picked a different team from the division to win the division.
I want to make this very clear. I don't feel great about the Buccaneers, but Pete loves the Falcons pick.
I don't necessarily. I said any team could win this division. That's not saying you love it. I said I like any.
You were
of the
pretty
teams.
firm on this Falcons propaganda.
I'm sticking with them with that third place schedule. I'll take them out of all these teams. Any team could win this division and it wouldn't stun me.
I feel great. You know my best thing I feel about in this division? I feel great about the Falcons finishing last.
Right.
Yeah, I do too.
That's the only thing I feel really sure.
Tell me this
like,
though, Mike. If the Buccaneers' bottom falls out, like we talked about, I mean they don't have depth either. Well, just like the Falcons don't have depth, the
But
Buccaneers
they have
don't
Baker
either.
Mayfield at least.
Yes, that's exactly.
At least they have
it.
Baker Mayfield.
Baker's good.
Which I feel like I
Not
got
Tua Tagovailoa.
And Booker, they got.
I feel like I have a pretty good read on this division. I think those three teams that I mentioned are going to be going.
Yeah.
And then the Falcons are just the worst.
I think Baker's good enough where like
Yeah.
even the bottom falling out is like 6 wins. If the bottom falls out,
My problem is
if the
I-
bottom
They'll have
falls
more
out-
than 6 wins at the worst.
If the bottom
in
falls
the
out
worst
on the
situation.
Falcons, they could
Yes.
like be drafting number 1.
I think my problem with the Buccaneers is that defense I think is terrible. And if you get Antoine Winfield injured or something like that, like there's no depth. What that defense is just awful.
And if you get AJ Terrell injured, the
like
Falcons
Baker Mayfield
are
can
awful
Baker
on defense
Baker
too.
Mayfield can be phenomenal though, and like they
But
might put up 30 points
we
and
talked
lose.
about this a couple of us ago. We can't do the if insert best player on this
Right?
unit gets
No,
injured.
we say that
Like,
quite a
come
bit here
on.
on this show.
The only
But-
if in the NFC South is if the bottom falls out and you got less than 6 wins, you're Bodie.
I'm willing to end on that, KG. Christopher Gazine, Silver Lake Zone. So I think we stay with the trend. So the first week we did we do the NFC West first or the AFC?
Yeah.
We did the AFC West first, then we went NFC West.
No.
Other way around?
Yeah.
we did
Okay.
the NFC
So we went
West
NFC West, then we went AFC West. Let's just keep doing that. Let's go AFC South next week. Stick with the trend. I don't hate.
Who's the AF?
That's Jaguars,
yeah.
Texans, Titans.
Could be interesting.
I think that's an interesting division. Colts.
Interesting again.
Yeah.
The Jags are all right.
I like the Jaguars. They're a team that I'd like to talk about. So
Lawrence is fun.
So I'm just going to throw out here. I did this schedule thing that I did earlier that I've mentioned a couple of times. I did it very rushed earlier, so I'm going to redo it, but I'm just kind of glancing over at what I had for that division. I guess it could be interesting.
Okay, tell me, we're not going to do any spoilers, but we'll do a preview spoiler. How many teams do you have making the playoffs in that division?
We're not going to do.
Well,
a
I don't want to
spoiler,
hear
but
the
we're
team.
about
I don't want to
do
hear
a
the
spoiler.
teams. What I'm saying, but I want like a preview of it. Like, how many teams do you have making the playoffs of that division?
Right now, with the current picks I made, I have 2.
Okay, see that's a good preview spoiler right there. I will be very interested to hear what 2 teams those are. 'Cause to be honest with you, I couldn't even have a good guess right now.
Jaguars, Colts.
But that will wrap up
Jags,
things
Colts.
here on WBTA on 1st and 15. We're gonna be back next week, same time, same place. We'll see you there. Take it easy.
Analyzing that, putting a perspective on every single step. Now turn up your volume and join the team. Things are about to get started. It's 1st and 15.